Yes, guys, we're back, and today is the 8th of April, which coincidentally, ironically, in fact, is the day of the Great Solar Eclipse of 2024. And we're here to talk about this particular eclipse, what the significance is, and how it will affect the whole wider world. This eclipse will be shown across majority North America, Mexico, and the US, as well as in Europe too, where hopefully us in England we can see it too, but it's unlikely. It's mostly going to be in the US and Mexico. So, Rowan, what have you looked at so far in terms of the eclipse and its significance?
I mean, yeah, it's not like we actually planned to record on this day at all. Just coincidentally that we started recording on April 8th. We're trying to get ahead of the curve here, so if we start recording now, we'll be before the eclipse actually happens in the US. I don't think it's happening until about 6 o'clock our time, so we've got plenty of time. Even though this episode might not get released before that, but so the significance of the eclipse, it's a tough one really because at the minute there seems to be all this fear and ramping up of some massive event that's going to occur in the US going off on the April 8th due to the solar eclipse, which is a bit weird. There seems to be a lot of fear mongering, especially amongst like the media outlets and things like that. There's a clip online of so just after the New York earthquake, which occurred recently, coincidentally, they were talking on the news about how we've got the Monday the 8th earthquake coming up as well to look forward to, the eclipse earthquake, they called it, which is a bit weird. I don't know if it was a Freudian slip, but it sounds like he was being very serious when he said it. It was very strange. Also, they're calling out National Guards, things like that, declaring state of emergencies in places like Arkansas. So it definitely seems like there's some sort of fear mongering going on around the eclipse, which is very strange because by all accounts and meanings, all it is the moon covering the sun and blocking it out. And like Ngombe said, you definitely won't be able to see it from where we are, so we're safe. Whatever happens in the US, whether an alien invasion starts or zombie apocalypse or anything like that, I think we'll be fine. But yeah, it's just very strange to me how there's so much media coverage of it, which seems like they're trying to instill some fear in people for a solar eclipse. Do they know something that the US don't know, or the general population don't know? Do the people in the higher up positions know something that's going to happen that they don't know and they're not prepared for? Something mad could happen. You never know. There could be something huge that just comes out of this that people weren't expecting. I highly doubt it. However, I do think in some instances that solar eclipses do have historic cultural meaning and esoteric meaning. And I think that is probably something that is still held for a lot of people in those higher positions. I think they still believe things could occur, or they might take it as an advantage to sway the population in some sort of way, use it as energy manipulation, because essentially it is manipulation of energies, really. It's, say, like a solar flare, for example. If that occurred, it's common knowledge that it can disrupt the electromagnetic field of the Earth. So why wouldn't it be able to have like a polarizing effect on the energy of the people of the Earth? Could they be using it as a way to create negative energy, create fear, and then therefore be able to drive some sort of policy and sway where, say, the next events are going to go in the US? Are they going to try and create negative energy to then create negative events? You never know. So I think there's always that case of they're going to try and use it for something that they can take advantage of, essentially.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, there's got to be some meaning to an eclipse when the moon is covering the sun. It's just it's just perspective on how people see it. Like you mentioned earlier with the state of emergency, you know, why is that? In a sense, that's the main question that we all have. It's like you said, perhaps due to fear. For me, it doesn't really make much sense. But unless they know something, then it's very suspicious as to why these governors in Arkansas and Niagara Falls are declaring emergencies. I mean, as well with the US, past the eclipse, you've got other events such as the election. Is there some form of electoral symbology towards this eclipse. Maybe recently they just had Fox News reporting that Trump's polls are low, but this is more political games where it's all going to be up and down, and this uncertainty perhaps is what people are seeing via the eclipse too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is the main focus, isn't it? It's the election at the minute, and it seems like they're always going to be ramping up for stuff. Events always seem to happen more frequently when there's, say, an election around the corner. I mean, you've had the Baltimore bridge collapse, you've had, say, like the earthquake in New York, and you've had the eclipse coming, which seem to be significant events running up to the election, which is very soon. So, yeah, as you say, energy manipulation, it could go deeper. They could be using it as a way to take advantage in some form or other, to be able to sway the population to do one thing, be scared of an eclipse. But I do also think as well, there is, as I say, historical significance when it comes to eclipses. And maybe there is something more to it than we actually know. Maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. Pardon the pun. When you look into an eclipse, it could be the fact that, say, in say, like, for Native Americans, they treat it very seriously when there's an eclipse occurring. What they'll do is they'll go in their homes, shut the doors, and won't do anything. They won't drink, they won't eat. They'll just let it pass. I believe they're very similar when there's like a storm or something like that. They treat Mother Nature as the strongest part of the earth, and you need to respect it. So you shouldn't go out and do it. You shouldn't be doing anything necessarily whilst that's occurring. You should just let it pass. Also, as well, saying in ancient China, they believed that the solar eclipses were celestial dragons attacking and devouring the sun. So you could call it, say, no, they're not fully understanding what's occurring. They just see it and they think that's what it is, or there could be some deeper meaning to it that is affecting us on a larger scale. A lot of people will consider it as well as a disruption of natural order. Some people say it's a bad omen. Who knows? Who knows? It could be a sign of worse things to come. April 8th, it's seemingly a significant date. It's 2024 as well. An eclipse is an interesting fact. Like, the eclipse creates the X, like X marks the spot. So when the two celestial bodies clash, they create an X in the sky, or like across the sky. And that is similar to how we have X as Twitter at the minute. X being, say, the completion, and X also being the 24th number in the alphabet, 24th letter, sorry, in the alphabet, which is significant because it has a link to 2024. Does that mean that this is huge, significant? It could be the most significant solar eclipse of our time, and it's a sign of more things to come. Who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see till later on today. We just need to make sure that we can get this episode released before the eclipse happens, but I don't know. I don't know if that's doable.
Well, we'll have to find out. I'm sure as well, like, with the X and with Twitter, it all comes down to, I think, what's coming, is especially with going back to the election and Twitter. Elon Musk, with the whole X, is there some form of connection between him and the eclipse? You could put the pieces together and find some connections with that, but you can't be too sure. Does he have a role to play in terms of the upcoming elections, or what's going to happen further on in the world? Absolutely, because this guy is a main character, a main actor on the world stage. Maybe this eclipse will show that, not necessarily show him, but he may show or pan out future events as to how people respond to it. Like you said, different cultures in ancient history revered this eclipse in two different ways. So whatever the higher ups decide to revere this eclipse afterwards will be what they do at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there's this significance as well, as you say, of Elon owning Twitter now. He's like the like full owner of Twitter. He also owns SpaceX, which has the X in as well, which is significant because of the top is spatial bodies. Basically, it's the celestial bodies that are interacting in this situation. I think it just blasted out some more Starlinks as well very recently. I saw a video of that on Twitter. Could that have some sort of link to what's going on with the eclipse? But I think the most significant thing when it comes to, say, like the space bodies and what's occurring with this eclipse is what NASA are doing. I don't know if I'm assuming you've seen this. So NASA are preparing to fire 3 rockets into the eclipse whilst it goes on to supposedly study the ionosphere and how the eclipse affects it. However, it's a bit suspicious. Like, why the hell are they firing 3 rockets into an eclipse? Like, it doesn't really seem to have that much significance. But also at the same time, they've named the project's named APEP or APEP. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly entirely, but essentially APEP is a serpent deity of ancient Egypt who embodied darkness and disorder and was the opponent of light. So I guess you have the link there with the eclipse and blocking out the light, but at the same time, the name of the serpent deity is a bit strange. And we have the links to, say, Bible, like the Christian interpretation of the serpent. We have the what's it called, the serpent eating its own tongue, the Ouroboros. So there's all that link to the serpent there. It's deception. It's the forbidden fruit. It's, you know, it's the serpent deity at the end of the day, and I just find it a bit weird that NASA are doing that. There's also, I saw a thing as well on I think it was on Twitter, to be fair, but not the most trustworthy source. But you have the NASA logo. It has the 2 red lines passing through. Obviously, if you put a serpent on the top, so like right hand side, the top right hand side of the logo, and you have the forked tongue sticking out, people were arguing that that's the forked tongue of a serpent. So you have the deception, the lies of the serpent deity there. And also as well, NASA is very close to the word Nasha. Nasha in Hebrew translates to lead astray, to mentally delude, or morally seduce, or to deceive, to be deceptive. And obviously we had the whole talk in previous episodes about how NASA may have started by looking at ocean travel rather than sea travel, and that what's above us might actually not be space, it might be the sea, it might be water. As spoke about in the past, how there's people have reported seeing like fish creatures out in space. Could it be that above us is water as well? Or could it be that space is fake entirely? Just speculation at the end of the day. Could they be telling us something deeper, that space doesn't actually exist? You never know. And this is all a farce.
It is. I mean, as for NASA trying to shoot rockets into the eclipse, I very doubt that will actually happen. I think it's all a complete distraction from the real agenda, if there is a real agenda to it. Because, you know, if they do manage to do that, then that's going to be, you know, what's going to happen is the moon just going to destroy. Is the moon going to be destroyed? Not necessarily. You know, how are they going to do it? You know, if the eclipse is, you know, traveling from one area to the other, how are NASA are they gonna have like tons of rockets launched across their base and start shooting rockets? I feel like, you know, it's just completely deceptive, man. I don't know how they're gonna do it. If, you know, it doesn't really make any sense if you just apply logic to it. So they're up to their usual.
It does definitely sound like they're just trying to toy with people. But people start talking about it. That's the thing. I think that's the whole idea, is people get, oh, look at this. And it's so openly a ridiculous name to have as well. Like the serpent deity. You don't have to be a genius to look at that and think, oh, that's suspicious. I think they're still essentially feeding into this narrative of fear-mongering around the eclipse, and something's going on. Like we said before, is basically like energy harvesting. But people get to talking about it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, you can't control what happens in the eclipse, so there is no point in getting fearful about it if the mainstream are trying their best to instill fear into people.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I mean, essentially, what's the worst thing that can happen is things go dark. There could be an electromagnetic. There could be a blackout. I think that's what the main talk is for people. People are saying there's going to be a blackout of some sort because of the electromagnetic frequency disruptions. And then you have the film recently that came out, made by Obama, the previous president, coming up to not far off the election, but where there was electromagnetic frequency warfare occurring, and everything went out, like an EMP had been let off. So, is that pre-programming? Is that predictive programming?
Yeah, and you've got the film last year that came out, Moonfall, as well. Whether there's any significance towards that could be the case. I'm not too sure. I mean, it's the first 100%. Solar eclipse in over 7 years, I believe. Total solar eclipse, anyway, since 2017.
Since 2017. There was actually a hurricane directly after that as well. Well, not directly after it, but I remember I was in America, not at the time of the eclipse, but shortly after. And we had Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma occurred, at least in Florida and things like that. So there was a natural disaster at that time. And then you have a lot of natural disasters occurring at the minute, especially in, say, like, it was in Taiwan that had the massive earthquake.
Yeah.
7 on the scale. And then you had an earthquake in New York as well. And it struck New Jersey. It struck Lebanon in New Jersey, which is interesting because of the whole conflict in Israel at the minute between Lebanon and Israel. And obviously Taiwan I thought was an interesting one to have an earthquake. I'm not sure. I'm not saying this is like 100% something that is planned. As I say, it could be something like Twilight language, like James Shelby Downward would suspect, like you have all these synchromystical links between place names and things like that and events. But Taiwan, like the conflict with China. I remember seeing a show a few years ago called Years and Years, it's called. And essentially it just depicts the tension between Taiwan and China. And what occurs is China nukes Taiwan, and that sets off a whole, like, it basically messes up the whole global economic system, things like that. And at the time, like in the show, Trump is the president. So, I mean, could that be more predictive programming for us? Is Trump definitely going to get in? I mean, there always seems to be this idea permeating in the air that Trump's going to be president at some point. It feels like he is going to be president again. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, and with Taiwan being a US ally, it is a bit, strange as well. So, yeah, that is a very good point with the earthquake and stuff like that. But as well as Hurricane Irma, that happened 9 days after the grand solar eclipse. So the eclipse in 2017 happened on the 21st of August, and then 9 days later was Hurricane Irma. 9, perhaps suggesting.
Yeah. So there wasn't a natural disaster. I mean, it seems like natural disasters are ramping up more and more. There seem to be occurring a lot. I don't know if that's just because I'm paying more attention to them, but there seems to be earthquakes more frequently. You seem to have like tsunamis, things like that. It's just, I don't know. The world seems to be going all over the place at the minute. There's also a comet passing the sky. I don't know if you've seen this. There's a comet passing the sky during the eclipse.
Is there?
So it's so there's a bright green comet. It's a bright green comet, and it's been nicknamed the Devil Comet, essentially because it's got magma burning from it, so it looks like it's got 2 devil horns. The official name is Ponsbrook Comet.
Yeah.
I believe it was first sighted in the 1700s. Sorry, but essentially, I was reading like a Nick Hinton post, and he was talking about how in the Book of Revelations there's a story of a green star called Wormwood, which passes and it causes a wormhole to open, and a bottomless pit opens as a result, and it causes the moon to darken simultaneously, which is kind of not dissimilar to how is the eclipse occurring currently. So could that be some tie into like the story of Revelation? But as well, an interesting fact that I learned is that the comet, it was first spotted on March 26th, which was the same day that the Baltimore Bridge collapsed. And obviously, you have the talk of, say, like, it's the devil comet. You have like bad omens stemming from comets and things like that. Obviously, the Baltimore Bridge collapse was weird, like it just seemingly came out of nowhere. You had, similar to, as I said before, about the film Leave the World Behind, how in that film, I don't know if you've seen it, like one of the first scenes is a boat crashes into the beach and it's gone haywire, so it's lost all communication, it's lost all, and that's the story of the Baltimore boat crash. They say it crashed because it lost power and it lost its communication navigation system, so it crashed into it. And another interesting fact about the bridge, so it was named after Francis Scott Key. It was the Francis Scott Key Bridge. That was the official name of it. Now, the Francis Scott Key, significantly, he was the author of the Star Spangled Banner, which is obviously the anthem of the United States. It's the flag is the Star Spangled Banner. So is that metaphorical? Is it telling of how the US is being attacked? As well, if you look into the etymology of Ponsbrook, which is obviously the name of the comet, the etymology seemingly translates to a bridge between waters, I believe, something of that sort. So you have the significance there of the bridge collapse and then the similarity between those two names. Very strange. And that's obviously the first time you see it, and then you have it appearing again today during the eclipse. So could the comet be bringing something down? Obviously, we had the talk in the last episode, I believe it was, very recently, about how some people believe that comets are harbors of disease, viruses, things like that. Similar to how there was the theory about COVID being brought by a comet or a meteor passing by, and particles spreading around like the Wuhan area, and that's how it actually first began. And say even going back to earlier episodes, like the zombies link, the Nazi zombies, like COD zombies, you have essentially the element 115, which creates zombies in the storyline of, say, Call of Duty Zombies. It's brought by a meteor near Tunguska River, and that is green, and obviously it's the green comet, so the element is green, and it could link to that. There could be some sort of metaphorical meaning there. Could be some sort of link, some esoteric link. Is that saying that there's going to be a zombie apocalypse coming from this meteor? Who knows? Or could it bring some sort of virus? Could it open a bottomless pit? And could we see the rise of, say, some sort of entity that we don't know about? Could a zombie apocalypse spread? Could it be another survival? I guess we'll just have to wait and see till the end of the day, in a few hours' time.
Yeah, in a few hours' time, yeah. And also, if you go back early in the episodes, given two states of given a state of emergency, that is no intended. There's obviously some intention behind it, that something is going to come after this eclipse, whether, as you've mentioned, some natural disasters, connecting the dots together with the comet and stuff. And when there's comets flying over the eclipse, then surely something's going to happen. Graham Hancock, in his television series Ancient Apocalypse, where ironically comets, I think it was in the US, where he found like bits of materials with comets and tying that to the serpents, where perhaps the ancient people of America saw that as a sign that something was going to happen. It's very strange, but maybe this is what these people alluded to with eclipses, or what eventually happened in that period in history. It's interesting.
Yeah, 100%.
Because
Yeah, as you just pointed out in Gombe, the whole ancient apocalypse, they did see the comets significantly as like the serpent deities in the sky coming down. Could that be a sign of what's to come? Are we passing through, as Graham Hancock would put it, the torrid meteor stream? And then we're going to see something big occurring in the next 10, 15 years. I mean, you have the whole link to even further back episodes when we're talking about, say, like the Phoenix events that occur every 138 years. And the next time that's slated for is 2040, I believe. If you go off the idea that the last significant event that occurred on a minor scale was, say, something like Tunguska, where you had the explosion of, say, a meteor in Tunguska, which wiped out a lot of wildlife. Only thankfully, or didn't wipe out too much. But are we going to see something big, say, 2040? Is this a sign of what's to come? As well, there are going to be a hell of a lot of planets visible during the eclipse. I don't think it's an entire conjunction of all the planets. However, there are a lot of planets visible, and I believe they are converged. I think there's only a few that aren't, or a couple, if that. But the last time there was a great conjunction was 2020 on the 21st of December. I don't know if anyone was like into the New Age sort of stuff back in the day, back in 2020. But there was the whole scare around the 21st of December 2020, where people thought there was going to be a big world-changing event, and the Earth was actually going to turn green, similar to like how there was the green comet, and a lot of things were going to get wiped out. So it's very, very weird time. I don't know if anyone was in that sort of camp. I didn't really believe it, but a lot of people were heavily invested in what was to occur on the 21st of December. People, I don't know if you remember Von Two Cut or anything like that, or Spiritual Soul.
No. I never was in the New Age.
But the next time, right, okay. But I do remember the significance of it. A lot of people were saying this is the marker and the moniker of what's to come. So this is going to be, say, the Great Reset. This is going to be the astrological signs of a Great Reset to come. And say the changing of the landscape of the Earth and things like that, and the political landscape. And the next one to occur is actually in 2040 as well. So you have the link to 2040 being the 138th year after 1902. So 2040, is this a sign of what's to come in that year? Are we just in the end times? Are we passing on time, waiting for that to occur? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, 16 years after this. Yeah.
Yeah, not long at all, really. We've not got that long left. But there's so much talk nowadays of us being in, say, like the end times. People are always like, oh, it's the end times now. But I think a lot of people would argue this is either manufactured. It's not genuinely the end times. No. They want us to think it's the end times to basically have us living in fear. And they want to bring about their own sort of rules, so they'll do it their own way. Maybe we've got the Antichrist coming next. Maybe the devil horns on the comet is significant for the Antichrist coming. I know that the Statue of Liberty was struck by lightning as well. And before the earthquake or during the earthquake, and the Statue of Liberty is the light bringer, which could be alluding to Lucifer, the morning star.
Several ties to Lucifer.
CERN's also been reactivated.
Has it? Oh, yeah. I've seen that. They obviously want to...
Yeah, it's been reactivated today.
Today?
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Almost planned.
And that could be how they're opening the portal, or the dimension, or the wormhole, or whatever, or the bottomless pit. That could be how they're doing it from CERN. They could be doing another dance around Shiva.
Probably, yeah. Probably doing it right now,
doing the
you know.
dance.
Yeah, but yeah, as you said with wormwood and wormhole, it all makes sense now that you talked about CERN and opening the portals. The portal to what exactly? That's the next question.
To hell, Paul, to hell,
To hell.
or to other dimensions. It could be like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Last movie.
that's more likely. We could have
I
other
mean, what
Spider-Men coming through.
was that movie? Predictive programming?
It could be, honestly. I mean, you have the earthquake in New York very recently. Maybe it wasn't an earthquake. Maybe it was a hadron collider. I mean, that's what happens in the film. Is they're
Yeah,
like, oh, it's just another earthquake. There's so many earthquakes going on at the minute, and it's not actually earthquakes. It's because they're smashing together particles, trying to open another dimension. And there's a link to New York. It fully could be, honestly. The truth is stranger than fiction. At the end of the day,
that's true.
they could just be
It's
telling
it's
us. They could just be telling us what they're doing.
yeah. I mean, they always do, man. In these movies, they just make it entertaining. You know, the truth can be funny at times, but once you see past the lines of the entertainment, you see the real intention behind it all.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I know that's how a lot of people argue, say that they avoid their karmic retribution, as they believe. So they believe they won't get any karma if they show us what they're doing. So if they show us through films, through any form of media, what they're doing in sort of the predictive programming, then they don't get any karma because of it, because we're agreeing to go along with it, even if we're not consciously doing it, because we've already seen it.
Yeah, yeah. Which is crazy, but that's how this world is.
I mean, you could even look to the say Mountain Dew. So Mountain Dew, a lot of people argue predict the future. They released a drink very recently, or they're planning on releasing a drink called the Star Spangled Splash, which is, as
My
mentioned
Joe.
earlier, similar to like the Baltimore Bridge collapse. It's the person who made the Star Spangled Banner. His bridge collapsed, and it's a splash. It splashed into the water. So either they know something we don't know, or it's just completely coincidental, and this just occurs because, as we've mentioned before, everything's just scripted.
Yeah, it could be maybe they're not doing it intentionally. Maybe they just want to produce a unbelievable Mountain Dew drink so that everyone can have it. Maybe they thought using Splash because it's a cool name. Who knows?
Yeah, but that is just really eerie. That is just really eerie how similar it is to what's occurred. It's just I don't know. Mountain Dew.
Yeah, it is indeed. But like synchronicities are for those that have the eyes to see, whether it's done intentionally or not by people. It doesn't matter regardless. These are crazy synchronicities that happen, and look, we don't know, but whether something's coming from that, we just have to wait and see. You know, you're only in control of what happens to yourself. Everything else is not in our control.
Exactly. I think that's the best message for people during these times is whatever occurs, just look after yourself more than anything else and don't give in to the fear mongering, because I think they just want people to pay attention to this stuff as much as possible so it feeds into their agenda. I mean, I guess we're not helping in a way, but it's also very interesting to talk about this sort of stuff um, and speculate what actually could be occurring that we don't know about.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting. You have to be level headed coming into it. It's not like people can talk about this stuff and be full of fear. It's about the message you portray. Like, yes, you can talk about potential things, but the intention is via your message or your point of view. You could be talking about this in a fearful way, telling people that be scared of what's going to happen because someone in the mainstream said that the eclipse could potentially result in an earthquake today. I doubt that's going to happen if you know, let your emotions aside and think logically, you know.
Yeah.
But like you said, they want people to feel fear, so they avoid living their best life.
Exactly. You're giving your energy away for free, essentially.
Mm.
Or you could, even if there is an earthquake, the best thing you can do is look after yourself and not worry about what's going on in the world stage, because as soon as you do, that's when you become so schizophrenic. You start worrying about everything and you start dissociating. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else you have, or is it time to
not
wrap up?
really. I think it's time to wrap up. I think we'll just have to wait and see what happens in, say, 8 hours' time in the US.
Yeah.
We'll just have to keep the news on and see if anything does occur.
Yeah, man.
If
I'm gonna be
any
watching
aliens
BBC
start
News.
attacking.
Yeah, gonna be tuning on BBC News. No, absolutely not. Whatever happens, happens, and maybe what will most likely happen is nothing happens, and next tomorrow is just a normal day. Maybe something down
Yeah,
the line, but as long as the next day is fine, that's all that matters.
exactly.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in and listening, whether you're listening on Spotify or any other podcast platform like Apple or anything else. So if you've watched us on YouTube, thanks for watching, and thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Peace.